Hi everybody, welcome to our Google Plus Hangout with the Buck Institute for Education. I'm John Larmer, Editor-in-Chief here at BIE, and we're coming to you today with a new theme for the month of November, effective teams in project-based learning, how to help students learn to be good collaborators. And our title for today's Hangout is Envisioning Effective Teams, because we have a special guest from the Envision Schools network and Envision Learning Partners. But I want to let you know that today's Hangout will be archived. You can look at it afterward or tell your friends at BIE.org. It'll last for about 30 minutes. And if you want to ask questions, you can post them on the Google Plus events page. And if I can get them into the conversation, I will. We might answer some at the end, or we might answer some offline after the Hangout on the Google Plus events page. Let's see, we'll last for about 30 minutes, plus or minus a few, like I said. And I also want to remind you that there's a blog up on our website by our director, John Mergendaler, about the gold standard for project-based learning. And we invite your comments on that. One of the pieces of the gold standard for project-based learning, we think, is collaboration, effective teamwork for students. So I'll ask our guests to introduce themselves. Justin, how about you go first?
Sure. It's great to be here. Thank you, John. Justin Wells. I am a longtime project-based learning teacher. I've taught middle and high school, and I was also part of the founding team of teachers of Envision Schools, which is a group of 3 schools in the San Francisco Bay Area that's kind of rooted in project-based learning and performance assessment and concepts of deeper learning. Founded by my great colleague and mentor Bob Lenz, and I kind of really sort of launched my teaching career, well over 10 years ago in the midst of that great environment, and really learned how to be part of teaching teams that implemented pretty ambitious projects, at least few a year. Over a number of years at 2 different Envision schools. And after that, I did a stint as a researcher at Stanford with the Stanford Center for Assessment, Learning, and Equity, known as SCALE, part of their performance assessment team. And I also did some great learning there around performance assessment and thought a lot about the intersection between performance assessment and project-based learning. Was also involved in helping prototype some of the performance tasks for the Smarter Balanced test that's getting unveiled. I'm now back with Envision and happy to be in the classroom right now, but I'm doing some work kind of coaching and consulting to schools around the country that are implementing various aspects of our model, including project-based learning. And I'm also a proud board member of the Buck Institute, where I'm just thrilled to be involved in the leading organization in my favorite pedagogy.
All right, thanks, Justin. Thanks for joining us. And Rhonda Hill. And Rhonda, tell us about yourself, one of our staff members.
Sure, thanks, John. My name is Rhonda Hill. I'm a Systemic Partnership Coach with the Buck Institute for Education. I was a teacher for 6 years, worked all of my teaching career teaching special education in urban settings. Then I moved to Innovative Schools as the Director of Project-Based Learning, which is what I became after I began my relationship with the Buck Institute. Became certified to be a workshop facilitator, and I facilitated PBL 101 workshops in the state of Delaware. I also supported teachers in the day-to-day, so after the workshop, now what? So I was lucky enough to be able to support educators across the state of Delaware in what PBL looks like in the day-to-day classroom. And then I joined the Buck Institute for Education as a Systemic Partnership Coach, and I've been with them for a little over a year.
Okay, thanks for joining us, Rhonda. On short notice, I might add. Bob Lenz was going to be here today, but he had some other business and sends his greetings to everyone out there, and he's a valuable partner of ours as well. So we miss Bob, but we're glad to have Rhonda. All right, our first question then, I wanted to ask you guys about, is collaboration important for PBL to be gold standard? we're trying to develop a high bar for what gold standard project-based learning could look like. And we're sort of wrestling with this question. If students only did individual projects instead of answering a driving question and creating products as a team, would that qualify as gold standard PBL, or is team collaboration an important enough feature to put it in the gold standard? Justin, how about you on that one?
It's a great question, and one that I've individually wrestled with too as a teacher, because I've implemented both projects that required collaboration among students, and I've also implemented projects that were more each student on his or her own, kind of negotiating the whole process. Because I've done both, and for different reasons, I do think that collaboration is not sort of a definitional feature of projects or project-based learning. And depending on your purposes, it's sometimes the right thing to do to have students not in teams. But we're also answering this question about the gold standard, which is about kind of like what's the kind of aspiration for what we should be shooting for. And on that sense, I do believe deeply that not only is it something that students need to be doing, and I'll talk about that next, but it's really something that the best work that I've done with students and other teachers has been in those collaborative spaces, because and the way that the sum often is greater than the parts, and all the learning that goes along with that. Rhonda, do you want to chime in there a little bit too around anything so far? I do want to speak a little bit about its alignment with standards as well, but I want to stick on the broad topic first.
Sure. Thanks, Justin. I always go back to how we talk about what the ideal, or who the ideal grad is. And it's really interesting that one of the very first few competencies that teachers share is really important to them in the ideal graduate is for students to be effective collaborators. And in supporting teachers and now supporting systemic partners and thinking about how to make PBL a part of the instructional culture, those key competencies, or what we call the 4 C's, are really important in terms of making sure that we're developing that culture among our professional staff as well as our students. So I think that also, though, collaboration isn't mutually exclusive to PBL, and that teachers really can and should, based on the design of the task, be supporting the students and knowing what it looks and sounds like to be an effective collaborator.
Okay,
yeah, and I would also just add that I'm glad Rhonda brought up the point around collaboration sort of always bubbling to the surface of these various lists of what matters to schools and their mission statements. The reason why we need to have students learning how to collaborate in a safe academic environment is because that's how you prepare students for college and career success, which, by the way, happens to be the major purpose of the mission behind the Common Core standards, college and career success standards. And it's not even a matter of interpretation. We don't even have to say, oh, we're interpreting the Common Core to feel that collaboration is important. I mean, you look at some of the standards themselves. One of the speaking and listening standards, I'm actually seeing it on my computer here, works with peers to promote civil discussion and decision-making, set clear goals and deadlines, and establish individual roles as needed. That's one of the speaking and listening standards. One of the writing standards, using technology, including the internet, to produce and publish writing, as well as to interact and collaborate with others. Participate in shared research and writing projects. So, besides the fact that schools are reaching this, Envision certainly reached this conclusion on its own prior to the Common Core showing up, that this is what we need to do. But now the Common Core is on the scene, we have this extra bit of validation that this is one of the purposes of school is to help students learn how to collaborate. And you simply don't learn how to do it by osmosis. It takes practice. You got to start early. They're not good at it in the beginning, and it's a many-year process. the data's coming in, like informally, of course. I Facebook some of my former students who are now in their 20s, and I asked them, like, so what's your take on project-based learning at this point? And it's great to see some of the quotes I get. You know, one student I had named Rob Koch says, in the post-educational world, there are no assignments, there are only projects. That's the term that they use when he's, you know, now an entry-level position at these different places. And another young lady noted how often job descriptions, because she's up with the resume trying to figure things out, how often job descriptions use the term project-based in the one paragraph they give. This is a project-based position, you know, style position. So, and then we could go on about how much teams are entering how students work in college. So I just sort of feel like from all these different angles, there's a mandate to have collaboration skills be what we do in school.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Justin. And even in non-common core states, I've noticed a lot of those state standards also include mentions of collaboration and working in teams and so forth. So that's a great point. It's everywhere, from standards to the workplace to what teachers really value and say they want for their graduates, and parents and committee members too. So okay, let's go to our next question. Sort of getting into the nitty-gritty, the nuts and bolts of how to help students work well in teams. So Justin, you can talk about how teachers in Envision Schools help students work well in teams, and Rhonda, you can chime in about any schools you've worked with or seen in our district partners or elsewhere. Justin?
Sure. The first I already mentioned, so I'll just echo it, and that is students have to be able to have lots of opportunities. They have to do it a lot. Period. Like, I mean, it's just you know, so often it's like you get one, maybe two chances over a 9-month year to kind of truly work in a team, and then everybody gets frustrated with the result and throws up their hands, and too hard, let's you know, do something that's kind of easier and more efficient. Well, that's why a lot of times it's not done, but it's also the reason why people aren't doing it well. So I mean, I'm a writing teacher, so I know firsthand how long it takes for someone to master something. And I just see that collaboration is kind of part of the same continuum. You know, we take students in at 9th grade, and by the end of 9th grade, I would say most of them aren't still very good at collaborating. And if we were just to feel like, oh, well, we didn't succeed, then you're giving up just at the beginning of the whole process. It's when you see juniors and seniors who have been in this environment kind of day in and day out, so to speak, or at least week in and week out, that you really start to see some of these skills start to be internalized, and they're able to deal with the different challenges. Working in groups is challenging. All of us adults know that. Ron, let me kick it to you. I mean, I could go on, but.
Sure. Thanks, Justin. I think some of the best advice I could give teachers when they're thinking about how to make sure that we're supporting our students and working well in teams is making sure that the reason you're asking them to collaborate isn't inauthentic. So think about the design of the specific task or the performance assessment that you're asking students to complete, and just make sure that it's a task that truly does call for collaboration, and be really mindful and do some pre-planning around what the specific intentions are around what each student will bring to the table, so that we're not confusing cooperation with collaboration. So those would be the two biggies that I would share with teachers. And then once you design the task and you're able to say, yep, my students really do need to collaborate in order to come up with this great product that I know that they can do in order to demonstrate competence or mastery in the standards in which I say I'm teaching and assessing throughout this project, oh, I just lost my train of thought.
Rhonda, that was a great point you made about cooperation versus collaboration, because a lot of people are used to cooperative learning and think it's just, you know, put kids in a team and have them do something. But collaboration is not just cooperation; it's actually working together on some shared task, and not just.
I remembered. That was it.
Okay.
Thanks, John. So once you've defined what it is you want your students to do and bring to the team, if they're collaborating they're making decisions together, they're having real conversations about here's where we know we have to get to, here's what we know about our challenge, and you're hearing this really great robust dialogue from the kids around how are we going to get there. So I think that that's really important as well, allowing that space for those collaborative conversations to happen. And then, you know, for teachers, what is it that we need to do so that we can get students kind of thinking and acting in this way? Justin, you said your ninth grader, you know, sometimes they end ninth grade and don't know how to collaborate. I taught fourth grade, and that is way younger than I ever want to teach again. When I taught eighth graders, I said, yes, they're going to know how to do all this stuff. And they didn't know how to do all that stuff. So I had to design opportunities where the students really did have to figure out what it meant to be an effective collaborator. We know what we have, we know our challenge, we know where we need to get, how are we going to get there? So kind of putting students sometimes even in tasks outside the realm of a project so that they can kind of dabble in what does it feel like and look like and sound like to be a good collaborator, put them in activities, ask them to debrief that activity. What did you have to do to be an effective collaborator? What did you expect from your buddy over here? And then come up with some norms around collaborative teamwork. So those would be my biggies.
Yeah.
Thanks for helping me in my brain lapse, John.
Yeah. And Rhonda, great points. I want to emphasize something that you and John kind of brought up together, and that is, you know, I think one of the things that I think project-based learning kind of naturally has going for it is that, to me, the defining aspect of project-based learning is that there's some sort of act of creation, like there's the building or performing of something that didn't exist before, and that actually really helps people come together toward a purpose that's almost outside of the group, and they're all looking together at the same thing, right? The finish line, the final exhibition, the product that they're excited about. So I just think it's good to acknowledge that one of the ways to get students working well together is just to start with a good project design to begin with, as to what are they creating, what's the skill that's being enacted. That, you know, even before you've designed your teams and worked on the skill of collaboration itself, you've kind of made a huge leap toward having good things happen by having some really great goal that the team needs to come together in order to accomplish. And so that's, you know, that authenticity that you're getting at is key. You know, cooperative learning, which John mentioned, where, yeah, let's just have a group of people come together to learn something together because learning is social. There's a little truth in that, but it can, if without them all kind of having this common purpose goal, sometimes it feels to the students like, man, this feels like I'm getting slowed down. I could do this better by myself, right? If someone naturally feeling that way, then there may be an aspect with the project design to begin with. One other point I wanted to make is about, just to get really sort of focused on technique, you know, creating teams or putting the teams together is, of course, a big decision point for teachers. You know, do the students self-select? Are the teams engineered by the teacher? I've played around with a bunch of different of these options over the years. I would actually say that my best results is when I blend both of those. What I'll often do is I'll have the student sort of write to me what's one person in the class that you know you'd like to work with, and then maybe I'll even state their reasons. In addition to a topic that they want to work on, things like that. And then I say, look, you're probably going to get your first choice, but the rest of the team, let's say it's a 4 or 5 person team, is going to be something that that I engineer and bring together using my students and what I think they need, right? Like, that's why the importance of relationship is so key to project-based learning. So I find when I blend those two techniques, I've had good results.
Okay, thanks, Justin. Good nuts and bolts tips there. And this next question is kind of nuts and boltsy also. So what are some typical issues that arise when students do work in teams, and you know, issues around challenges for collaboration among students, and how do teachers help handle them? So Justin, how do the Envision Schools do that? And Rhonda, how have you seen, or how how have you coached teachers, perhaps, to handle some of those challenges in collaboration? Rhonda, you want to start this one off?
Why not?
Sure.
I talk a lot with teachers and now with the folks I support in my systems about creating the culture for this to happen. And that sounds a lot easier said than done. Some of the typical things that I really recommend for teachers is just to be really transparent and have conversations with their students about these big lofty expectations. And in PBL, the students are faced with a challenge. So how do you really get the kids excited about that challenge? We talk about, like, what's the need to know, so, like, what's the stuff that my kids need to know, but I used to tell my kids, I'm not happy until you say, Miss Hill, I need to know. So they have this, like, common driver that they're, get them excited, get them hooked, and then be really transparent about what you need from them in order to meet that challenge. So I think sometimes in treating to that help me, help you type mentality in your classroom is really helpful. Contracts. I supported a school in Delaware that was a new tech school, and they would advocate for the students to sign almost like partnership agreements. Going into this project together, I, Rhonda, do solemnly swear that these are the things that I'm going to do because I know that's what it takes to be a good teammate. So then that kind of becomes a common entry point for all of the students. They understand the language. They're signing their name saying, I commit to these actions and these behaviors. So when those actions or behaviors are not exactly being adhered to, you have almost kind of that groundwork to go back to have those conversations. And for just really being mindful that you are always in the spotlight, even when you're not in the spotlight, and kids see what you do, and kids see how you work with your peers, and I was an external person coming in, so I talked a lot about modeling collaboration and how do we make sure that we're having these really robust collaborative dialogue with our peers, and how are we going to transfer some of those lessons learned in those conversations and instances into making sure that the collaboration that happens in our classrooms is really strong. Justin?
Okay, thanks, Rhonda. Justin, how about some challenges you or other Envision Schools teachers might face?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the big one, of course, it's the perennial concern about fairness. When you're assessing the product of a group, how do you know how to fairly assess the individuals that together made that product, and so you see the two sides, like the student who did most of the work and yet the product wasn't all that great because he or she wasn't getting the help that was needed. People or people that didn't do anything and they're getting too high of a quote-unquote grade because riding on the shoulders of others. I mean, these are the classic and legitimate fears and skepticisms about collaborative work. And it often, let's face it, this stuff gets pinned on project-based learning all the time. There's a number of sort of logical fallacies at work, both not only in jumping to those conclusions, but I would also say in some of the design that the teachers who are implementing the projects are doing. I mean, let's face it, like if the only grade that you're giving is, let's say there's a big project that's around some research, right? You want students to do like research something, and they're going to end up making some presentation or a short documentary film or something. And your primary purpose was to measure their research skills. And at the end of it, if you as the teacher don't know how to measure the individual contributions of that, and that was your primary skill, then that was a poorly designed project. And why have collaboration become like the primary mode when you were trying to get at student research skills? That's a mismatch between a performance assessment target and what the project is allowing you to measure. So you have to go back to the drawing board. First of all, we need to acknowledge the fact that if collaboration's at play, It's because you're trying to measure their ability to collaborate. That's one of the things that you're gathering evidence of. So you need to have some standards and norms and rubrics and things associated around that so you can measure the quality of the collaboration. Second, if there are other skills at play, you want to see their research skills. You want to see some of their digital media skills, etc. Then be sure that the project's designed in a way that allows you so have a companion research report or paper along with the documentary film that allows you to target their research ability on an individual basis, because that is important to you, as it should be. And then you also have this means to evaluating their collaboration skills along the way. So often when I see these problems or criticisms around collaboration happen, sometimes you just have to sort of back up all the way to the beginning of what were the skills we were trying to measure, what are the products and different performance assessments that get at those. You usually can tease these things out if you really think things through before the students start. And that's the other thing I would say, is that problems arise when students work in teams. They are going to have some difficult, they're not going to get along, you're going to have to do some group psychology sessions. So the more front-loading you can do, the more you can have all the stuff, the resources ready before the project starts, the more that you as a teacher can give your time and energy to coaching some teams that are having difficult issues, and have these sort of sit-down sessions with them where they really have to kind of grow up and start working well together. And if you're busy like designing rubrics on the fly or getting ready for tomorrow's lesson in the midst of the project, you're just not going to have the time and energy to give to counseling groups and helping them through those struggles. So just a couple of points I wanted to make there.
Yeah, that's a great point, Justin. Actually, on the topic of group grading, I read a little while ago, Ron Berger of Expeditionary Learning recommends don't grade the group product. Don't grade that final product. Grade lots of other things along the way, including perhaps, collaboration skills. You could assess those, and checkpoint products and individual products, but don't even give a grade to that final group product, which takes away the issue of fairness, and if one person did more than work than another.
Yeah. I see Ron's point, and I certainly have done projects that do exactly that. Although there are other times, though, when I think it's valid to, especially if you've got a product that really can't be, here's another key thing. If you're going to have collaboration, try to have it be toward a product that simply can't be created by someone by himself or herself. Too often we do that, right? We just sort of take something that an individual could do, and we just have a group do it instead. So no wonder the high flyers just go off and do it themselves. But there's plenty of projects out there. An example would be a project we did where students had to kind of learn some science content and ultimately teach that content in a group lesson to some younger kids in elementary school. And they had to create a film, and someone had to do the lesson plan, and there had to be a team teaching environment that went into it. There had to be more than one book, the book that was read, they had to bring together. We made it so that there was no way that one kid could do this by herself. And so then it's fair to judge the overall quality of the final product. And for those high flyers that struggle and they're not getting the product that they want, you know what? It means they probably need to work on some of their leadership skills. And it's a skill they need to work on that wasn't reflected in the final product. And if that's established up front, then it's fair to judge the group. But Ron's point is also well taken, that you can definitely assess the benchmarks and really get a sense of individual skills in parallel with what you're learning about their collaboration abilities.
Right. Okay, thanks, Justin. We're getting close to the end of our time, but I wanted to end on a sort of uplifting note about what are some of the benefits seen from having students work in teams. We talked about the valuable skill for the workplace and their future in college and careers and so forth, but maybe what are some other sort of unexpected things you've seen that students gain from working in teams? And Rhonda, I'll start you off on that one again.
Empathy. You put students in situations where they have to work together to achieve a common goal, and a byproduct of that sometimes is that you forge friendships in your classroom that you thought never would have happened, or you entreat a group to I know that so-and-so is going to need a little additional support, and I really trust that you guys are going to be able to provide that support to him or her, and then, therefore you plant the seed for students recognizing the role they have in advocating for the needs and supporting another, and sometimes one of the really great things that happens is you see the bud of empathy growing in your students, which is, I think, that warm fuzzy that we like as teachers.
All right, great point, Rhonda. Justin?
I'm going to sort of bring up a project I was just mentioning. This we called it the Bill Nye and I project because we had students kind of seeing one of those science-based Bill Nye and I episodes, and they had to kind of recreate that for younger students. And it's just an example of one of the things I like about a long-term collaborative project that really requires teamwork is that there's all these different opportunities through time and through different modes of the project for different kids to wake up to some aspect of their intellectual life or their set of skills or their ability to work in a team, etc. There's just, we talk about differentiation and different points of access for students, and well-designed projects are just perfect for some students just they aren't into school, they aren't into learning, they don't see the purpose, and then some but if a project is sort of complex enough, there's just these surprising, and they're always delightful times when a student suddenly awakens to something that is exciting. The Bill Nye and I project required students to do some teaching in front of little kids. So I had one student who, he wasn't into reading the science books that sort of fronted the project. He wasn't captured by the producing of the video. He wasn't captured by some of the problem solving around how to take this information and put it in a really plain spoken way for younger people. But boy, did that student wake up over this idea of being a teacher live in front of students, younger kids, and all of a sudden now that student had this reason to really kind of catch up with the rest of his team because he did want to communicate the science content to them. So suddenly he did start having more of an intellectual awakening to the power of what had been read and what he had learned, because there was that moment for him that grabbed his imagination and his skills. He was a natural in front of a classroom, and whereas other of his team members who were awesome at producing video or great at processing these books kind of shrank from that a little bit. And so he got to experience success. He got to learn the science content in a surprising way, and I could give lots of stories like that where some sort of project that requires lots of different skills and a team effort wakes people up at different points and can fundamentally change their relationship with school from that point onward.
All right, great points. I think those are some good final comments from both of you guys. We don't have much time for any more of a long conversation, but we should probably wrap up and say goodbye to our viewers. So just a reminder, folks, if a couple questions popped up, I saw them, and sorry I couldn't get to them during the Hangout. We'll answer them later on the Google Plus page. And if you want to chime in with more questions, please do. This Hangout was archived, or will be archived at BIE.org right away. And next week we'll be having another conversation about collaboration and project-based learning with some great guests, Elliot Washer and Ben Daly from some of our Deeper Learning Network partners, and Aaron Brengard, the principal of Catherine Smith School in San Jose. So that'll be next Tuesday, November 12th, also at noon Pacific time. Thanks very much for joining us. So Justin and Rhonda, thanks a lot, guys. See you around.
It was a pleasure. Thanks, John and Rhonda.
You're welcome. See you, Justin.
All right. Bye, everybody. See you next time. Thanks.